whilst I present, purely because when I present on Teams and share my screen and be on camera, it wants to freeze and kick me out of the session. So I will go off camera whilst I present. Let's make a start. So can someone confirm my screen is sharing? Andy, can you see that screen?
Yes, we can see it. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Brilliant. So let's make a start. Now, before we dive in, I just want to kind of clarify that today we are specifically talking about ransomware. Now, for all of you on the call today who are familiar with ransomware, firstly, congratulations to you guys. You're obviously the lucky ones, but be rest assured that you'll be hearing a lot more about ransomware as all industries have seen an explosion in attack over the last 12 to 18 months. And those attacks show no signs of slowing down at the moment. Now, what you're seeing on the slide at the moment is the exact definition of what ransomware is. It's a malicious attack via software that is designed to lock you out of your critical data, your critical infrastructure, until you have paid the ransom, hence the name ransomware. Now, ransomware was originally aimed at individuals because many of us don't have particularly great security on our personal machines. But cyber criminals started to figure out that if an individual is willing to pay the ransom, then an organization most certainly needs to pay that ransom. They will be willing to pay a lot more to get their critical data back, as well as their critical infrastructure. In fact, the first ransomware attack took place in 1989. It was the AIDS Trojan, which was released on a floppy disk, if you can remember what those were. Now, if you were infected, you had to pay $190 via the US Postal Service to an address in Panama. Now, because of the difficulty in receiving payment, ransomware attacks didn't really take off until the early 2000s with the emergence of cryptocurrencies. But, when these attacks took off, they really did take off. And, the security industry responded with a variety of ever more sophisticated tools in the form of antivirus, next generation antivirus, IDS, web application firewalls, and in the 2010, we saw the very first EDR technologies begin to appear. Now, while companies are investing in a vast majority of the type of solutions that you see on the slide here, you'll also notice, these are solutions you have in your environment as well. But unfortunately, even with this increase in technology and ever sophisticated tools, we're still seeing that increase in ransomware attacks. And as I've mentioned, it doesn't seem to be showing any slight signs of slowing down. Now, as the global leader in ransomware containment here at BullWall, we wanted to figure out what's going on. So we partnered with Cybersecurity Insiders to survey 453 cybersecurity professionals. The results even shocked us. Everyone was on the same page that ransomware is a serious threat. And as you can see, 79% of respondents said that an attack on their organization is extremely likely. And while they've implemented a multi-layered security infrastructure and followed all industry best practices, they are still worried about that threat of ransomware. Now, only 40% of respondents felt that they were confident that they could prevent an actual attack. And what we're finding more and more is that IT leaders are no longer confident in their preventative security tools, and we don't blame them. And that's because cyber criminals are becoming smarter day by day, month by month, with attacks becoming more sophisticated and many, many different ways of getting onto the network also becoming more sophisticated. Ransomware is constantly in the news, and it happens to the largest of organizations. From an organization with the largest cybersecurity budget to the smallest, it's impacting everyone on a global scale. But this isn't news to you. We do see a lot of organizations getting hit by ransomware. And it's important to understand this is not because they don't have preventative security in place. All the organizations you see here and nearly all the customers we talk to, they have perimeter security, they have endpoint security in place, and these are great tools, and they are able to prevent a lot of threats, including some ransomware, but they simply can't stop enough of them. They will not stop all ransomware from getting in and onto the network, because if they did, we wouldn't be hearing about so many different ransomware attacks. Now, the truth is these tools are often circumvented or bypassed by cyber criminals, and organizations are falling victim to ransomware attacks literally every single day. Not a day goes by now without one organization making headline news for being hit by that latest ransomware attack. And, ransomware criminals are indiscriminate. They target businesses of all shapes and sizes. You could be a healthcare organization, retail, a law firm. You could be a large casino. Doesn't matter which vertical in which you operate, every organization has something to lose from that threat of ransomware. So the real question that everyone's probably thinking, how is ransomware, how's it still getting through? Well, we'll touch on that a little bit now. So this wall you see in the middle of the slide, it represents the numerous preventative security tools that we see in the market today. And you yourselves, you might have a handful of these or maybe more within your existing environment. And while they've done an incredible job at stopping a lot of malware, including ransomware, cyber criminals have a long history of finding ways around it. So let's talk a little bit, should I say, listed above this wall, you will see the top 5 attack vectors that cyber criminals are still using today. And what we're going to do is talk a little bit about how those cyber criminals are actually managing to get into an organization, understanding that their tactics change all the time. Starting with email phishing. I mean, you must have seen these types of emails, emails that look like they're from, someone delivering a parcel from Amazon. It looks like an email coming from your boss when actually it isn't. It's the cyber criminals becoming very creative and finding ways to get onto the network. You have email gateways, authentication, training. These are all created to prevent these types of attacks, but they still get through. With social engineering, the criminals are very, very creative. They send emails acting, as I've mentioned, like well-known companies. They'll prompt recipients to click on a link. All cyber criminals can hijack RDP sessions through stolen admin credentials. And while MFA, firewalls, and these other preventative tools are, established to stop this from happening, they're not perfect. Cyber criminals are, they're great spies. They find a way to sneak in and hide in a network for days whilst they slowly disable security tools so they can then deploy that ransomware. Cyber criminals also compromise well-visited legitimate websites to hide their malware code or redirect visitors to a malicious site. How about the malicious USB cable that, that has malware and ransomware programmed inside the USB connector? These cords are out there in the world. They're picked up from trade show booths or easily purchased on Amazon. Most endpoint solutions provide some level of prevention against this tactic at an endpoint level. Now, the example I want to touch on this slide here is of the Tesla employee. They were offered $1 million to plug a malicious USB into the company's IT server. This is a true story, and thank goodness he was a loyal employee and didn't follow through. But could you imagine if he did? These prevention tools would not have been able to prevent that malware from spreading, since it would have been launched directly into the critical IT infrastructure and not the endpoint. Last but not least, drive-by downloads. This can happen to anyone in a multitude of different ways. Simply put, a user unknowingly picks up a malicious malware through emails, surfing a website, or simply an everyday task. Think of it like picking up an unwanted hitchhiker. Who knows what their intentions actually are, or in this case, the malware strain picked up. Although these tools do detect most malware, what about new zero-day strains that these solutions don't know about, or they don't know that they're malicious? How can preventative technology stop a brand new threat that might have been released only minutes ago when they haven't had the opportunity to learn or understand that threat? Now that we've walked through those top 5 attack vectors that are causing issues in today's world, before we move forward, I want to clarify that these prevention-based security tools are very crucial to preventing, malware, as well as some strains of ransomware. But remember, today we are specifically talking about ransomware. And in this sense, relying solely on prevention-only strategies requires a business to ultimately be 100% effective 100% of the time on 100% of your attack surfaces against 100% of threats. Now, the threat actor have only got to be successful once. As we just reviewed, it just takes one of those 100% variables to dip to even just 99%, and then that threat actor has won. They've gained access to your network. And once a threat actor is successful in entering your IT network, what do? How do you contain an active ransomware attack in that worst case scenario when all else has failed? And as you can see on the slide, you cannot be 100% protected 100% of the time. Nothing in this world is perfect, and protecting your critical data and critical infrastructure from ransomware is just another example, because that is what cyber criminals are looking to target. So, we know the answer to this question. You have to contain the attack before it spreads, since prevention-based tools, they're no longer helpful once the attacker is in. But before you can contain the attack, your IT team is faced with 3 critical questions to do this effectively. Firstly, you must identify what files are being infected and where they're located. Are they on premise? Are they in the cloud? Maybe they're in your data center somewhere like Azure, potentially Office 365, OneDrive, or Google Drive. You need to understand which files are encrypted, because what data is contained in those files? Does it contain personal information, payment details, business critical IP potentially? You need to be able to identify the user and or the device that acted as the entry point for that attack, because if you cannot identify them, how can you ever hope to stop the encryption ongoing, within the environment? And all these questions will run through your mind the second a ransomware attack is launched. We hear stories all the time of organizations that go through this process, and although they successfully prevented the spread by manually ripping out cables, shutting down servers, manually quarantining, they know that every second counts. Every second is crucial. Every second could be costing hundreds, thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars, leaving them with a mess to clean up and a significant amount of data corrupted. So what if you can contain an attack automatically within seconds? And this is where our technology, BullWall ransomware containment, comes into play. Just to give you a little bit of an introduction, our technology is often described as a last line of defense for active ransomware attacks, and it provides a revolutionary defense against active ransomware attacks. It is a completely agentless technology, which means it's going to be very lightweight and non-intrusive to the environment. Our technology is protecting what is most important to an organization. That is critical data and critical infrastructure. We are a fully automated 24/7 containment solution against active ransomware attacks that slip through your existing security technologies. As I've mentioned, we're protecting critical data and critical infrastructure. We do not focus on protecting devices or endpoints, because that is not what ransomware criminals are targeting. But given that we protect your critical data and infrastructure, that makes our technology also completely complementary to anything else that you have in your existing environment. And given that ransomware primarily likes to target your data alongside critical infrastructure, we can provide all the relevant compliance reporting for you as well. And this will be shown as we get into the demo. Our technology does exactly what it says it will do. It contains active ransomware attacks. So if cyber criminals get through, you have that solution in place to stop them in their tracks, that last line of defense to protect you against active ransomware. So what I'm going to do here is talk through where our technology sits in this layered approach to security. Now, most organizations will have some form of perimeter protection. That'll be email gateways, firewalls, web gateways, and they all very much fulfill a similar role, in that they're ultimately looking to filter and block as much bad and nasty stuff from getting in and onto the network into an end user's device. Now, if anything does bypass that perimeter layer, you've then got your device layer, your laptops, your desktops, your mobiles, etc. And these will have some form of protection on them, EDR, XDR, MDR types of technologies. But the problem between these two layers is there's so many different moving parts. That's what criminals will look to exploit to gain access to the network. It might be a missing patch on one of your devices, could be users clicking links in phishing emails, clever social engineering, novel payloads, zero-day attacks. That list is endless. And the technologies here do an incredible job. They really do. You need these technologies in place, but they will require constant signature and security updates to be sure they can protect and detect the latest forms of malware. And those updates then need to be deployed to every device in your network. And if any of those devices haven't managed to grab that update, that's just another vulnerability the cyber criminals can look to exploit. The last thing I'll mention on this layer here is your mobiles, your IoT devices. Now, these are growing in numbers. They will have a connection to the internet. Ransomware attacks have been initiated from these types of devices. The example that I use is of a casino that experienced a cyber attack. The way in which the criminals gained access to their network was through an IoT connected thermometer in one of their fish tanks. I use that example because it's pretty eye-opening, and it highlights a couple of things. The first thing it highlights again is how many different ways a criminal can gain access to your network. And the second thing it highlights is for any of you in the IT team is, you know, how difficult your job is to ensure all of those vulnerabilities are patched, all entry points are locked down to stop the user from getting in, and as close to 100% as possible. With the constant growth of internet connected devices, that job gets harder year on year. And it is a matter of when ransomware gets in, not if. Now, beyond this layer, you have your data storage, your critical infrastructure. This is what the criminals really want to gain access to. If they can get access to this area here, they can encrypt your data as well as your critical infrastructure. And that's what causes the damage and disruption to any organization. The ransomware criminals do not target devices or endpoints because who will pay a ransom for an endpoint? No business will pay a ransom for an endpoint. You can very quickly and relatively cost effectively replace endpoints and devices. If they get to this layer here, it becomes a very different story. So where does our technology sit in this layered approach? Some of you may have guessed it. We sit down here in orange, that last line of defense to protect the beating heart of your business, which is that data storage, that critical infrastructure. We are not focused on devices or endpoints because you have other technologies that fulfill that brief. We don't actually care how the ransomware gains access to your network, but what we will do is when ransomware gains access to your network and delivers that payload, we will contain that attack within seconds. What I'm going to do is just simulate a ransomware attack. And what you'll see is a little red bug come in from the top of the screen. You'll see it bypass the firewall. You'll see it gain access to the network, potentially utilizing some of the entry methods that we've touched on in this session. Now, as soon as they're on the network, they will head straight to that data storage and critical infrastructure and look to deliver that payload. Once that payload is delivered and the illegitimate encryption of your data begins, RC will react, and it reacts in seconds because RC is detecting on your data. It is looking for the purpose of ransomware, which is the encryption event. RC does not focus on the ransomware itself, the strain, the behavior. It is purely detecting on your data. And as soon as it sees that data being encrypted or manipulated in any way, BullWall ransomware containment will then put in place fully automated isolation steps to remove the user and the device from the network, which now means that attack has been contained. The rest of your network, along with your users, can remain operational. And most importantly, BullWall ransomware containment will ensure business continuity. That, on a very high level, is what BullWall ransomware containment does. And as we move into the demo with Andy in just a moment, he will touch on the different isolation steps we can look to put in place, but also how does our technology tell the difference between the good encryption you're carrying out internally in your own data and the bad encryption that comes from that of a ransomware attack. Now, as we move into the demo, Andy, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Andy. He'll do a live demonstration using real ransomware strain in a few different IT environments, and you'll be able to see firsthand how EDR detects, and in comparison, how our technology, a ransomware containment tool, will contain that attack. So, Andy, I'm going to hand over to you to provide the demo.
And if I could just get confirmation, you can see my screen okay?
Yes, correct.
Yes, we
Perfect.
can. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jake. So as I mentioned at the start, what I'm going to do is give you a high-level overview of our solution and then take you through a number of simulations in which ransomware could get into your organization, but more importantly, how our solution deals with that. So as Jake mentioned, RC is installed on a very lightweight server, and once that installation takes place, it's accessed by using a URL. So in my case here, it's standard HTTP, but we can also use SSL if required. So as part of the prerequisites, we would ask you to create us a number of Active Directory groups. Now, based on the level of access determines what you can do within the tool. So once you've added your credentials, you are presented with our dashboard, and I will go into a little bit more detail on this later on in the demo. But the first thing we need to do is onboard where that critical data resides. So these are your file shares on-prem, up in the cloud. These could be application servers, database servers, and domain controllers. So as part of the prerequisites, we would ask you to create us a service account. And that service account does not require any elevated permissions. It purely needs read access to the environments that we want to monitor. As you can see here, if we don't have the access, the tool will indicate that, but it will also email the RC administrator to advise them that this environment is no longer being monitored. So we also have RC server monitoring, which basically protects the application servers, database servers, domain controllers, and your actual system drives on the servers themselves. So basically what we're doing here is placing honeypots within these critical environments. So if a ransomware were to come into these, what would typically happen is it would start to attack the top level of a folder structure or the bottom level of the folder structure. So what we're doing here is we're placing these honeypots at the top and at the bottom, and then populating this with some generated data. So if you were to be hitting this method, all that would happen is this dummy data would become encrypted. Our detection sensors would kick in and do the necessary isolation. What it does mean is that core business data in between these two folders won't be touched. If you're using DFS, which is distributed file system, it's exactly the same principle. We just require read access to the namespace. And as Jake mentioned, we do interact up into the cloud. So whether you're using SharePoint Online or Google Drive, we're able to monitor the data that gets synchronized up into this environment. So once we have onboarded where that critical data resides, we need to look at how we do that detection against ransomware. So on the right-hand side, we have our list of known bad, which consists of extensions, artifacts, and file headers. So as part of the subscription to the tool, we have a team in the back end that are regularly looking for these strains of ransomware. As soon as we come across these, they are automatically pushed to your dashboard. Now, because we are that agentless solution, as soon as it hits here, we are protected. So from an RC perspective, we do not need to send any signature updates down to your local clients. But with RC, we are not solely reliant on this list of known bad. It basically enables us to detect that known strain of ransomware even quicker. But we need to take into consideration that unknown strain of ransomware or that zero-day exploit. Now, the way we do that is that we need to allow RC to learn your data over a short period of time using our built-in machine learning capabilities. What we are looking for is the known good file extensions, but also the file headers associated to those extensions. So why is that important? Because that unknown ransomware were to get into your organization, it would do one of two things. So firstly, it will look to encrypt that data with that unknown extension. So what that means is we have not seen it as part of our known bad list. We have not seen it as part of our known good list. We would detect that as an unknown strain of ransomware due to the speed of the encryption. So the reason we also look against the file headers is certain ransomware will come into the organization. That encryption process may not change the file name or the file extension, but it will alter the file header. So again, with our built-in detection sensors, we're able to detect that very, very quickly. But more importantly, we go ahead and put those automatic isolation steps in place. So basically what we are highlighting from this screen is that we know about the known bad threat. We know about your known good data, but more importantly, we are catering for that unknown threat as well. So I'm going to jump now back onto our dashboard. So what you've seen in the left-hand side is our live log, and this is what you would see within your organization. What is key to point out here is that we do not continually scan your network. These are all file-based notifications. So as soon as somebody makes a change to a file, be it modified, created, deleted, or renamed, it's at this point we check that file for that illegitimate activity. So with our solution, we are utilizing the SMB and CIF protocol, which already exists within your Microsoft networks today. So when you introduce RC, you're not actually introducing any overhead. So as an example here, our largest customer is around 122,000 users spread across a school district in Texas. We are monitoring everything from one RC server without any performance issues. So in the center here, we have our activity live, and at any time it shows you the files that have been modified, created, deleted, or renamed. And then we just have these couple of graphical interfaces on our dashboard. But what we are looking at this stage is just that good flow of data. At this point, nothing illegitimate is taking place. So we're going to go ahead and run our first simulation. So what I have here is a Windows 10 VM, which is connected to my domain and connected back to a file share that exists on my server. Now I'm going to fire off something here called a DMA locker. And what this ransomware will do, it will go in and encrypt those files. This process will not change the file name or the file extension, but it will alter the file header. So we can see our alert level is now starting to increase, but more importantly, that machine has now become isolated using our built-in automated processes. So we can see that that ransomware has bypassed that first line of defense. It's starting to encrypt the data. Now going to the file share, which I've just attacked, I can see here a number of files have become encrypted, and I can see that due to the date stamp. And if I try and open one of these files, we can no longer view the content of that because of that encryption process. So without RC in place, what would happen is this ransomware would freely start to encrypt everything on your file share. Now, I've only got a handful of files. You could have terabytes worth of data in a very short period of time. That whole file infrastructure could be encrypted, and there's every potential for that ransomware to jump to other file shares within your organization. So drawing our attention back to the dashboard, what we have provided you guys in the IT teams is back that control. So you can see that the ransomware has bypassed that first line of defense. We have very quickly reached that 100% alert level. We know the type of breakdown that is based on our detection sensors, but more importantly, we have identified the individual and gone ahead and put those automatic isolation steps in place. So we also have something up here called server alert level breakdown. So the way this works, let's say a cyber criminal got into the environment, starting to encrypt that data manually. Now, in this instance, it may be difficult to identify the individual, but because we can still see that illegitimate activity taking place directly on the server, we have multiple different steps that we can perform. So we do interact into those EDR NAC-based solutions. So if they are on the server, we could utilize these to go ahead and isolate or quarantine that server. We could use our built-in capabilities where we can shut that server down automatically. But what we have provided you guys in the IT teams is the visibility that something illegitimate is taking place directly on that server. Then you have the opportunity to shut that server down manually from within RC. So basically, it's providing the IT teams that one pane of glass. You do not need to then go and find that server in your Hyper-V or VMware, maybe physical server. You can do everything from within RC. So let me just touch on how we do the isolation process. So we mentioned we do have that interaction into an EDR type solution. So if we are using these tools like a Windows Defender, we could utilize their built-in capabilities to do the isolation. But if not, it doesn't matter because RC can work standalone. And in such case, we need to populate our asset list. We do this in multiple different ways, but what that gives us is the real-time information about who is logged onto that device at that given time. So we can identify the PC name, the username, the IP address, but also the type of device they're logged in with. So that's really important because built into our system, we have around 150 template scripts, which we can utilize to help isolate every single type of scenario an individual could be logged in with. So for example, they could be connected to a laptop. They could also be connected to a Citrix session or up into SharePoint Online. We'll be able to see that and isolate every single type of scenario. So built into the system, we have our isolation process. All we're doing is using batch files, PowerShell scripts. There's no new scripting technology. If there's certain aspects you would like to see, as long as we can script that, we build that into the tool. What we're looking at here is very much like a playbook. There is no set amount of limits to the number of steps that we can perform when it comes to isolation. So as an example, we could send a splash screen which would appear on a user's display as they are shutting down. We could disable all network connectivity. So that is literally dropping that machine off the grid. So in the scenario I've just shown you, we actually sent a forced shutdown. So we need to ensure the RC service account has the appropriate permissions to do that, which is delivered via domain policy. As this being a forced shutdown, if the user was in the middle of doing any work, they would have no ability to save. It would literally drop them straight off that device. So in addition to using our built-in capabilities, if you do have that EDR solution, we can have a combination of the two. So if that EDR solution or the machine was not talking back correctly to the centralized console or that agent become compromised, we're still able to use our built-in capabilities to help with that isolation process. Now, finally, I can go ahead and disable my user in Active Directory. So this is not just on-prem, but it's up in the cloud as well. So we can see my user now, John Doe, has become disabled. And in addition to that, if we want to disable the PC device, we can do that also. But we also append something to the existing description field. The reason we do that is just to make your IT teams aware that this user, this device has been isolated by BullWall. We'll go ahead and trigger off our built-in instant response plan. So what we have here is very open, it's very customizable. So if you want to make changes to this, you can, or you have your own instant response plan. We can easily build that into the tool. But what that gives the RC administrators the easy access to understand the steps that need to perform if an alert were to be generated. So the next stage of the process is the recovery. So I know during this period of time, some good files were generated, but more importantly, I can drill down to that individual. So yes, this one person will lose a little bit of downtime, but we are talking about one person here with a handful of files rather than that whole file infrastructure. So the business as a whole would still be able to operate. We can then go and highlight these, export that to a CSV. So based on your backup strategy, this individual can be up and running relatively quickly. And because we know the exact location of that encryption will help in that restoration process. Now, bear in mind, the ransomware that I did deliver does not change the file name, does not change the file extension. So if you were to be hitting this method, it will be very difficult and costly to identify which files have become encrypted. But with RC in place, what it will provide you is that 100% accurate report. Now, the final part of all of this, if any of these files did contain personal information, that then becomes a data breach and you may need to report that. If not, you might just want to generate that internal report and provide that to a C-level. So depending on the outcome, you can click on either of these buttons here, and what we have is our populated report, where some of this information here is free-form text, but we automatically populate when that attack starts, when that attack stops. We can type in the summary, the location, the server, but more importantly, we automatically populate the file owner and the list of files that have become encrypted. So that was my first demonstration I wanted to take you through, and I hope you can see how quickly we're able to do that detection. How we can do that reaction by interacting into basic SMTP, into an SMS gateway, into a SIEM, into a syslog, but also into a call management solution as well. How we can tailor that response to meet your requirements, and how quickly we can generate that recovery report for you. So at this point, I'm just going to stop sharing one screen. I'm just going to jump to another demo setup. And if I could just get confirmation from somebody that you are able to see me okay.
Yes.
Yep,
Yes.
perfect.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so let me just explain what we're looking at here in the background. So again, I have my RC running. We have two laptops here in front of me. So the first one is running a cloud simulation. So in my case, it is SharePoint Online, but it's exactly the same principle if we were to be using Google Project or Google Drive, sorry. The second one here is running one of these new breed EDR solutions. So in my case, this is SentinelOne. Now, we're not here to say anything bad about these solutions because they are there to do a job. But what we're going to take you through is how we do that interaction into these types of solutions to help with that quarantine process. So let's go ahead and jump to our SharePoint screen. So what I'm going to do is run a really old ransomware, and this is the WannaCry, which hit our NHS in the UK some years back. So basically what we're highlighting at this stage is that we don't care if that ransomware was released today, in the future, or in the past. What we are looking for is the telltale signs of that illegitimate activity. So if I go ahead now and hit attack, so what's happening here is that ransomware is going after that OneDrive store. Now with that built-in synchronization process, these files are now going to be uploaded into the cloud, as you can see, with that .WannaCry extension. So for us to be able to do that, what we need to have is the trust within the cloud. So from a SharePoint perspective, we basically need to create an app registration. That app registration provides RC with a unique client ID and client secret, which then allows us to be trusted. We then utilize the ability for Microsoft to basically identify the sites that are within your organization. We have the trust, we're able to monitor anything that gets uploaded up into the cloud. From a Google Drive perspective, it's exactly the same. We need to create a Google project, which again provides us with that trust within that environment to allow us to monitor that data. So if we go back to our RC, we are relying at this point at the cloud, so there can be a slight delay. But as you can see very quickly, we have reached that 100% alert level. We know the type of breakdown that is based on our detection sensors, and we have 28 sensors that work together to build up to that value. More importantly, we have identified that individual and gone ahead and put those automatic isolation steps in place. So in the case of this device, as you can see, it's not shutting down. And the reason that is, it's connected directly to my internet rather to my domain. So in such case, I can't see that machine to use our built-in capabilities. But if it was using one of these new breed EDR solutions, because that is cloud-based, we're able to then go ahead and isolate or quarantine that machine. But if this user was accessing the cloud data from a home device or a mobile phone, we can't see that to shut the machine or isolate or quarantine. But because we can still see that illegitimate activity taking place directly on the cloud, because we have that trust, we can isolate the account. So we disable the account on-prem, up in the cloud, to stop any further synchronization. So what we are looking at here on our dashboard, we can reflect that onto a mobile phone. So basically we are providing that mini SOC. So whatever time of day, whenever it is, you would be identified that something illegitimate is taking place directly within your environment. More importantly, RC has detected it and gone ahead and put those automatic isolation steps in place. So I'm just going to go ahead and reset my dashboard and then take you through our final simulation. So this is using SentinelOne, so one of those new breed EDR solutions. So I hope a lot of you would protect or stop the use of USB storage devices, but it doesn't protect you against the use of USB charging cable. So this is basically an iPhone charging cable where this part here has actually come preloaded with ransomware. So these cables are widely available. So an end user could have purchased this from an untrusted source. They then plug that into the side of their device to charge their mobile phone as they are working. So if we go to our SentinelOne screen, in a second, what you will see is that run box appear. What that's doing is going after that crown jewels data. If we go back to our dashboard, we can see again very quickly, we have reached that 100% alert level. We know the type of breakdown that is based on our detection sensors. More importantly, again, we have identified that individual. So this particular device is domain joined, but as you can see, it's not shutting down. And the reason it is we've used our two-way RESTful API to make that call up into SentinelOne. So because we can identify the individual, that call's been made with that user details, and with all these types of solutions, they can identify the device or devices that individual is connected to, and with their built-in security policies, we'll go ahead and quarantine that machine off the network. So we jump back now to our SentinelOne screen. If I now go to my File Explorer, we can see I no longer have access to my network resource. If I go to a browser and type in a web page, for example, or use BBC, as you can see, that internet access has now become blocked. If I go down now to my system tray, as you can see at the moment, that has indicated that everything is okay. But in a few seconds, that will change with an orange statement at the bottom to identify to that individual that this device has been quarantined by using those built-in security policies. So everything I've shown you here today in regards to using the EDR solutions, disabling accounts within Active Directory, because we have the ability to do that within RC for when an attack has happened, once you have done that analysis, we have the ability to revert those changes. So the RC administrator would not need to speak to your EDR manager or your system administrator. They're able to revert those changes directly from within the dashboard itself. So to summarize before I hand back to Jake, so RC is installed on a very lightweight server. More importantly, in all these devices that I have shown you today, we don't require an agent, so it is very quick and it is very easy to deploy. So we don't care how ransomware comes in, we don't care the strain of ransomware that comes in. What we are there for is to contain it very, very quickly, but more importantly, we stop that costly downtime. So I'd like to thank you very much for allowing me to show you this demo. Yeah, please, I'll hand back to Jake. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Neo, I think are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you both for a detailed presentation that you just took us through and the demo. For anyone who has questions, you can raise your hands or add them into the chat, and I'll, refer them back to Jake and Andy. We just have a few questions for you, Andy, or Jake. So one, how is BullWall's EDR solution different from the known EDR solutions in the market currently, and who would you say your competitors are currently?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We're just to clarify, we're not an EDR technology. Our technology is very different to EDRs because EDRs are monitoring your endpoint devices, and that is not what criminals are targeting. I think I mentioned in the presentation, no business is going to pay a ransom fee for a device when you can, wipe that device clean, re-image it, and or potentially replace it. What the criminals are targeting is your critical data, your critical infrastructure, because as a business, you need that to be 100% operational to allow your business to be operational. And that's exactly what we monitor. We monitor critical data, critical infrastructure like application, database servers, domain controllers. And as we mentioned in the session, BullWall ransomware containment, or RC for short, is an agentless technology. So there's nothing installed on endpoint devices, so it makes for very quick and easy installation, and it doesn't impact network performance. In regards to your question about BullWall's competitors, we do get this a lot, but our technology is so unique in the market at the moment that we don't see any direct competitors. And as I've mentioned, we are complementary. That's really important. We will complement EDR technologies. We sit alongside them. We complement firewalls. We don't want to replace anything in the environment, but we want to complement them and protect that beating heart, that data storage, that critical infrastructure, because that's what criminals target. If they can get to that area of your business, that's what causes the huge and costly downtime associated with ransomware attacks.
Thank you. And for this unique and exclusive solution, how much would you say, like the cost of the solution itself? If you could just break that down for us.
Yeah, not a problem. We have a very simple licensing model. It's a subscription licensing model with an initial installation charge. We charge based on per Active Directory user. And if any of you on the session today are interested in understanding and receiving a quote, just please reach out to your relevant Liquid account manager, and they can easily provide you with that information.
Thank you. And are there any additional solutions that we can leverage on from BullWall?
Say that again, sorry.
Are there any additional solutions that we can leverage on from BullWall?
So are you asking what
additional protection?
What additional protection does? Okay. So what additional protection does BullWall provide in comparison to what potentially you might have in the environment? So a lot of the technologies organizations have in their environments at the moment are prevention-based tools, and they are great. We're not saying they're not. They do prevent most malware, and they can also prevent some ransomware from entering onto the network through endpoint devices and other ways and means of getting in. But unfortunately, you won't stop all ransomware. You will not stop all of them. It's impossible to do that. And once a ransomware attack slips through the existing security technologies you have or enters your network, without going via an endpoint device, what you have in place won't be able to help you at that point. But that's what our technology can help with, because we want to contain the attack before it spreads across the infrastructure. We're looking to mitigate the damage. We want to reduce your recovery cost and ensure that, in essence, that every business can ensure business continuity. We want to make a ransomware attack a minor headache opposed to a potentially business paralyzing event. So hopefully that's answered your question.
Thank you. It has. Thank you both for the incredible session. For anyone on the call who might have more questions or want to inquire, please reach out to your LiquidC2 CAMs, and we'll be sure to get back to you with that. For now, you can also scan the QR code on the screen to schedule a follow-up call. Thank you so much for joining. The recording will be available to stream, and we will be sharing content through mailers after the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.